Hey guys, today's video is all about neutral density or ND filters. So what are they and what do they offer to your photography and videography? A neutral density filter is a filter that reduces all wavelengths of light equally without altering saturation, contrast, and sharpness. In very simple terms, ND filters are just pieces of semi-transparent glass that allow you to control the amount of light going into your camera. Now you might be wondering why you'd want to control light going into your camera using semi-transparent glass instead of your three pillars of exposure, aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. The answer to that is ND filters give you an additional level of creativity in certain situations where your exposure controls are limited, making them a more than welcome addition to any camera bag. Before we talk about what kind of situations these might be, let's begin by having a look at what ND filters generally look like and how to understand them. Most of the time, your ND filter will simply just be a glass pane that you can screw onto the front of your lens. It is therefore usually round in shape like this one. This is actually what is known as a variable ND filter. This type of ND filter allows you to control the amount of light being filtered within a given range that can be changed on the fly without switching between different filters. This one in particular is an ND2 to ND400 filter. Now we already know that each stop of light either doubles or halves the amount of light, and so the ND filter system works exactly the same. The filter I have here has a density range from ND2 to ND400, which means that at ND2 we have lost a single stop of light, and at ND400 we've lost about 8.6 stops of light. This filter therefore doesn't quite make it to ND512 to make it a 9-stop filter. This might all be a little confusing, but I have here a chart showing the number of stops lost in relation to the naming system for a better understanding. On the far left we have the number of stops lost, in the middle is the light transmittance for each of those stops, and finally on the right we have the naming used for each of the stages. So for example, an ND64 filter is one that allows 1/64th of the light through, which is effectively a loss of 6 stops of light. Just as a quick side note, the greater the amount of stops lost and lower transmittance, the darker your ND filter gets or greater density. Now let's talk about situations where you need to use an ND filter. If you want to be able to achieve some long exposure times in broad daylight to get a wide variety of artistic effects like emphasizing motion with blur or softening turbulent water, this is by far the most common use of an ND filter. ND filters can also be used to achieve shallow depth of field in extremely bright situations where your shutter simply wouldn't let you get the right exposure, even though that's rare on modern cameras. And finally, one very common use of ND filters is with video. If you're in a very bright situation but want to maintain a cinematic frame rate and the right amount of motion blur with the 180-degree rule, you'll most likely be forced to either reduce your aperture a great deal or use an ND filter. Here's an example. These are two shots taken at the same time and under the same conditions. On the left is a shot without the ND filter. To be able to get a good shutter speed for my frame rate, I had no choice but to close up my aperture the smallest it could go, and even so, the shot was still overexposed. In the second shot on the right, whilst maintaining the same frame rate and shutter speed, I am able to shoot the same scene with good exposure and a wide aperture of f2.8, giving me more artistic freedom to work with a shallow depth of field. This is all made possible by the use of an ND filter. ND filters are great tools. Their effects cannot be replicated digitally in one shot, making them a necessary accessory to have for any photographer or videographer. They are also small in size and usually very cheap, making them a great addition to any accessory bag. Thanks for watching, and I hope that this video was useful to you. Please leave a like or a comment, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more videos like this one. Catch you folks in the next one.